All right, three, two, one, and we are on. Hello there. Now, after every single fraud comes on the news, we have an explosion of fraud experts. Why, how, what are the authorities doing? What will the authorities do? And auditors क्या कर रहे थे? Looking back, there is a perfect vision of things, and that's why it's called hindsight 2020. Because we know what has happened. However, there is another way about it. Without knowing, how do you find out if anything has happened? And there is the principle of predication. Now, what is predication? Now, predication, it's coming on your screen right now, is just the technical definition is it is a totality of circumstances that would lead to a reasonably professionally trained and prudent individual to believe a fraud has occurred, is occurring, or will occur. Predication is the basis upon which an examination is commenced. Fraud examinations should not be conducted without proper predication. In other words, professional judgment. I'm Anirudh, an ACCS CFE, and with me to elaborate on this is Managing Partner of CFRA LLP, Chartered Accountant Chirag Doshi, who is also a CISA and has more than 15 years of experience in IFRS, IAS, forensics, and investigation, both in Indian and as well as international levels. Chirag sir, it's glad to have you here. So
thanks. Thanks. It's, I think, a wonderful idea, and it would be great talking to you for next half an hour, 45 minutes.
yeah,
And let's see how it goes. Yeah, I'm excited.
sure. So predication, I mean, it's basically professional judgment, and it's how you build a case. So it's like this legal thing. Prosecution needs to build a case. So when we are looking at fraud, we have to check whether there is enough. Is there enough to start for investigation? Because investigations are primarily very expensive, and then if you don't find anything, that's even more disastrous. So firstly, let's break it in fraud into two categories, like which is firstly the one where the entity itself is committing fraud, like Satya, where it's financial statement frauds, where the investors are defrauded. And the other one is occupational fraud. That is a different angle. Like in PNB scam, it happened because of two employees of PNB who actually connived, who actually overran the SWIFT system. They were the ones who actually gave the loans without any proper margin. That comes under occupational fraud. So let's look at occupational fraud first. Now, post-COVID, two sectors which have reoriented and will face more difficulties are the retail and the hospitality sector. Let's just start with the retail. What do you feel retail is going to be like in the future?
So the retail industry is going to be quite different now. With this new scenario, we've seen that obviously the industry is growing big time, but a lot of things are happening online. A lot of things are happening, in a very fast mode with less securities available. Things have evolved very quickly in last 6 to 8 months, specifically in this industry, which could definitely lead to the circumstances, as you said, where there are high chances of an occupational fraud happening, an employee doing a fraud on an entity, or your vendors doing a fraud on your entity, or sometimes your customer stealing stuffs out of your entity. So this kind of frauds can happen on entity, and this is one area which could blow up in the coming year.
What are the different types of frauds? I mean, you have identified people who will commit it. Are there any particular types of frauds that we should look at?
So obviously, when we talk about a particular retail industries, there are various kind of frauds, small to big, could be financial as well as operational. Some of the examples, I would like to share with you, which can, result into a revenue loss or an asset loss to an entity, and which is been calculated in some researches to be a very huge amount globally. Some of them small things are like, if you visit a mall where there are multiple shops, of various brands, like for an example, a Shoppers Stop over here, or a particular mall in India. Now, when you will see that there are multiple brands and their shops available, they keep their employee, one or two employees on that particular store of theirs, within the bigger store, to cater their customers. Many of the times you would have seen, and even Anirudh, you would have gone for shopping and seen that you go there and you don't actually find that person on the store. So how do you tap them? Now, these are kind of things where entity loses revenue. These are kind of things where employee is supposed to serve you for what you pay them, but they are not doing their services, and because of which there is a loss to entity, there is loss to investors. Now they are roaming around somewhere in the mall. They are not at their particular place. Now these are some kind of small frauds, but results into loss of revenue on a big scale. For one of the entities where we started tracking them through their mobile GPS phone, suddenly we realized that they don't move away from the shop. They're standing there, and which results into when a customer is coming, they get one of the best services. They get what they want. They get convinced with these people, and they are buying more of your stuffs. So these are some kind of elements which some people say it's operational lapses, but I would say it's kind of an occupational fraud on an entity. If being tapped and controlled properly, this can result into a lot of efficiency, effectiveness, and end of the day, a good revenue for the entity.
So we're not just looking at actually theft, which is the most simplest thing going on. This moves into efficiency,
Yeah.
opportunity cost, even.
Yes. Yes.
That
So,
is extremely. I mean, that's the next level.
yeah. Apart from that, various kind of frauds which happen in retail is changing of tags. When a customer is buying, he sees a tag, but on the counter, you may change a tag and you may scan the barcode. So for 1,000 rupees item, you are scanning a 500 rupee item, and the customer is paying cash. So end of the day, you recognize that 500 rupees in your pocket. So this is another element where tags are being swapped to make money, which could also be controlled by way of proper controls, reconciliations, and other operational controls being placed properly. So this is another element where a lot of retail entities are losing out money. And you do a reconciliation after 6 months, 1 year, or maybe even after 2 months. You then write it off such differences. So these are small amount when taken in big, but slowly an accumulated amount is going to be big.
Well, again, it's occupational. The person suffering is always the entity.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
very true.
Moving ahead, there is something called sliding fraud, which I've heard about recently.
Basically, sliding frauds are something, as I said, that when you keep changing those tags or discount schemes, when you start applying to a particular product which is not under a scheme. Now, when you start doing these stuffs, it's like it gets accumulated over a period. So that's one of the element. Another element in sliding, it happens is when you see that they are scanning that product, you run through that scanner, and the scanner records the price for it. Now what they do is they swiftly slide that the way that the scanner does not recognize that product, and the cash has been collected. In the end, what will happen is there will be an inventory difference which will be then written off, because you feel your systems are best and nothing can slide through. But sliding frauds are another example in today's scenario where we are also relying a lot on systems. So there are ways to slide them quickly, and you can pocket that money.
Yeah. Even ACFE always asks us to check the cost of goods sold.
Yes.
If you see a variation in that, if there is an unnatural increase. But again, the issue comes with that by the time you do that, it's too late.
Yeah. So if you're aware of all these things and you keep a regular tab, it is something also like when you keep recurring this exercise at particular stores of yours.
Yeah.
It's like putting a camera on a signal, where you feel that if you break a signal, your photos will be clicked and you will be fined, but you don't know whether the cameras are working.
Yeah.
So putting in vigilance itself will save a lot of money. Putting some checks like this will automatically save money. And then obviously, if you find something, cite something, or there are red flags happening, then definitely you can go ahead and do a complete forensics or investigations.
Yeah, again, the basic principle is still physical inventory and perpetual inventory.
Absolutely.
But again, the problem comes with timing. Because
Yes.
the COGS thing, it's always at the end of the month or a half yearly or quarterly. And by that time, a lot of revenue is already gone. So the
Right.
issue is again being with proactive.
Right. Absolutely.
So be COGS, and we have looked at that. But looking at the perpetual and physical inventory, that is the simplest principle. And it's late nowadays, and especially when in the supply chain today, you have too many people in between. There are vendors, there are outlets, and how do you manage that there?
So again, in a retail industry, we've seen that a lot of loss of revenue happens. One, if there is connivance between you and the vendor's employee, your employee and the vendor's employee, whereby retail industry is facing a lot of issues. And what happens is when the stock does not come in many times, the employee knows that none of the promoters or top management looks at the scrap goods or the goods which are broken when sent for repairs. Now, nobody takes a physical stock of goods sent for repairs.
Oh,
So what these people do is when these goods are being moved out, they just show it as sent for repairs, and it just lies there. And you just pick up that quantity and reconcile your inventory, but nobody goes and verifies that area ever. So that is another element in terms of watches we've seen. Good watches which are being bought are being shown as repaired. So those kind of checks you will have to put. So if there are regular reviews of this, you will come to know that the goods which are bought and not even sold are going for repairs. So, these are the elements happening. Stock reconciliations, many times we've seen that our employee and the other employee don't do that clearly. And, both of them are enjoying the piece of cake where somewhere a teaming and lading can also happen in such scenarios where there is a connivance between the two because they are regularly talking to each other.
yeah.
So,
That receivable lapping, basically.
absolutely. So that's another thing which happens. So these are the areas like discounts, inventory, slidings, employee control. All of these elements should be thoroughly checked on a regular basis with a proper investigation eye, and that's what is going to help you to build up a lot of revenue. Many stores, another one element in inventory, I have seen that many times to manage the zonal, because if you go to a retail larger chain industry, you will see that they have zone wise accounting. So Bangalore is one zone, they may have 50 shops or maybe 100 shops in that zone. Mumbai could be another one, or West East, how they have divided.
Yeah.
Now sometimes we've seen what happens is nobody takes stock of individual shops. So if one shop the stock is less, they will place an order on the warehouse
Okay.
directly without internally checking, because his efficiencies or his KRAs sometimes gets affected because of that. Because in retail, lot of KRAs are based on sales and how you are selling more or less. So what he does is when he places an order with the shop next door, the next door is showing a sale to this shop, X shop is showing sale to Y shop. So the X shop guy gets sales booked and his percentages are higher. And the Y guy, what he does is he places if he doesn't want to do this, he'll place an order to the warehouse. Now warehouse will send the good. Now what happens further is nobody has noticed in retail is the warehouse, the stock level goes down.
Yeah.
So they place an order on our vendors and collect the stock and keep it in our books. So there is a stockpiling in the shop next door, which sometimes you don't use that because of the reason of your KRA getting disturbed and his KRA getting increased. So all of these things are internal, but if captured well and balanced properly, it's going to be saving a lot of revenue for a lot of entities. So it's more like a proactive, as you said. Today our whole session is about proactiveness and predication and not going back after the fraud has happened.
Yeah. On top of that, retail, I'm always looking, this principle, that old principle of performance materiality.
Absolutely.
That is what is coming, because by the time it becomes material, to fir gaya sab.
Gone. And it's good. So once gone, it's very difficult to recover.
Yeah. That's and in retail, especially stock counting itself, people just and even in the yearly stock, in even statutory auditing, when you have to do the yearly stock take, that itself is an exercise,
Yes, it's a big challenge
but
because
it
you
needs
can't
to be done.
close your store. You can't
But
close your store. It's running.
yeah,
So yes, it's difficult. It's very difficult to capture that. If you can't finish it in one overnight, it's going to be a challenge for reconciliations as well.
yeah. All right, so moving on. Now let's
Yeah,
take the hospitality industry.
sure.
Basically, with travel shutdown,
Right.
these people were virtually bankrupt, and many of these sectors actually had to close down and face bankruptcy. Now, because of a lot of restrictions which have been lifted, yes, I think yesterday only Australia finally lifted its COVID restrictions.
Right.
These guys are going to reinvent themselves, and
Right.
again, the usual issue that people are going to take advantage of this.
Right.
So, what are the common types of fraud which employees are going to do, which you feel will be happen?
So I'll tell you that what we've seen also
Mhm.
and what are high chances now also. So basically, obviously, earlier where the industry is working full-fledged and which will soon happen, as we've seen things are reviving pretty good everywhere. Soon they will be working at a good capacity. These days also we are seeing everybody rushing to hotels, restaurants everywhere over weekends. It's packed,
Yeah,
right, and it started again.
Goa is
So
back.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I would divide this hospitality industry into three or four different parts. One is your hotels, which are big hotels
Hmm.
where you go and stay, lodging, boarding, everything is available. Have spas facilities, all of those expenditures. Another element, I would take a restaurant, which is there all around you as well as everywhere. So they are into restaurant business or chains. Third, in hospitality also comes clubs many times, where now again they will also open up which were closed. So these are three or four kind of industries in hospitality. Let's take the hotel. Certain kind of elements or red flags we've seen in hotels let's start from the front desk.
Mhm.
Now, in hotels, many times what happens is the owners are different and there are managing agencies.
Yeah.
Like all top brands don't
Mhm.
own the hotels.
Mhm.
They run the hotels which are owned, the property is owned by somebody else. There are sometimes where they themselves own the property.
Mhm.
So what happens when there is a differentiation between owner and the operators? There are a lot of things which we have seen many times is on the front desk itself. You've seen the credit card machines, right?
Yeah,
When
yeah,
you go, you pay through credit. Most of the people in hotels are paying through credit cards.
yeah.
So they had kept multiple credit card machines on the counter.
Mhm.
Now, when you keep multiple two machine card, everybody is aware of it is going and linking to the bank account, which
Mhm.
the owner or the promoters are aware of. But let's say if I have a machine where that machine is linked to an account which does not belong to the entity.
Mhm.
Now I may swipe certain over there and certain over here. So if I have any direct booking, see if I
Mhm.
have any online booking, if I have any reservations already done, it's still difficult because somebody would question that.
Yeah, yeah.
But so even in that case, people are passing adjustment entries, cancellation entries, and they collect the money, the counter guys.
Mhm.
If somebody is coming on spot and booking an hotel, it's so easy for me to swipe his card on another
Yeah.
machine and go. And even like how many ever in your life you have stayed in an hotel, went back, and then again called back and tried to check, okay, what is my amount which you have credited in your books. You never do that, right? There are no reconciliations, no confirmations on transactions in hotel.
Yeah.
Now after you go back, if he is passing some adjustment entries that the customer was upset,
Mhm.
so he did not pay. Now this happens when you pay with cash.
Mm.
So he will pass some adjustment entries into the system. It's an hospitality industry. Nobody is going to, no statutory internal or any auditor is going to doubt about it also many times.
Mhm.
So, they say that it wasn't refund, but it can easily be pocketed. So swipe machines, I told you, is another target to do that. Another element when you go to spa several times, you would have seen adjustments in over there. Now there also there are a lot of people who pay through cash because many times the bookings are done by corporates, so you don't
Mhm.
want to have spa in your bill because you're using it for your personal use.
Yeah.
So you may be paying cash. Now this could easily be taken off because there's no control again over there. So that's one area. Another area you can see is car bookings through hotels. When you don't use an Ola, Uber, or a taxi, and you book a car through the hotel for your safety reasons. Especially the foreigners do that
Yeah.
when they go to another country for the safety reason. Now here also it could be a lot of times you may not show a trip and just pocket that, because you have a credit card machine. Even if he's paying through credit card, you can swipe it into another machine.
Yeah.
So, occupancy fraud, payment frauds, discounts fraud, adjustments fraud. These are typically happening very smoothly in such industries. Yeah. Another example I was saying was about the restaurant, which could also be applicable to an hotel, restaurant, to a club, everywhere. Now, what happens in a restaurant, especially big five-star restaurants or clubs? The waiters expect a lot of tips.
Yeah.
So, many times you will go and see the quantity suddenly increases. Now, one place we had seen the quantity was increased too much, and in spite of so much of sales, the restaurant was going in loss. So we recommended a food audit, because food is the only element over there. So when you recommend a food audit, many people ask me, what is food audit? As I think maybe you would have also had a similar question immediately, because here no money is involved. We are talking about food.
Yeah.
Now nobody thinks in this area. We've been gone to a level where we go and sit with the chef. We tell him that, okay, let's say one paneer butter masala.
Yeah.
How many pieces of cubes do you put into it? So what is that gram of paneer? Because paneer is the major cost in that dish.
Yeah.
Rest is okay, it's a gravy. So that paneer we then multiply with the number of dishes sold and try to put out an average and see that if there is a major variance, then definitely something is wrong. Either they are giving more quantity to earn more tips, or there is siphoning on that they are taking it home, which is also a possibility in a restaurant. Or third possibility is the waiters themselves are eating over there, which obviously you may have a different kitchen or a different food for them. It's your choice, but end of the day, they are not supposed to be eating over there. So there are 2-3 elements which happens which you can capture, because this is a major cost in a restaurant or a club or a five-star restaurant. So a food audit sometimes, and when we did it, bring out wonders. The cost reduced. The dishes were served in correct proportions. We've seen in clubs when teas are served, they charge you for one tea, but they'll give you an entire teapot to enjoy when you're sitting four of you. And then you have to tip that waiter also, because you're going every day or every week over there.
Actually, this example is very famous in especially the it's actually internationally Americans. There is this one guy, John Trafford. He's a very famous bar expert.
Right.
So he's actually pointed out, because in those countries, pub culture is very popular. So what bartenders do is that they will give you more alcohol so that they can get a bigger tip.
Yep. And that's very common.
By the time you tally it, you can understand how much your revenue has been lost.
Absolutely. And so far, if things are going good, you might not even look into this area. But times like this, when they come, every penny counts.
Yeah, and especially when you're off season, as in the hospitality industry, that's when you really see the variance.
Yes.
And in food, the biggest problem, which is that the raw materials, especially the food, is perishable.
Absolutely.
And in five-star places, they insist on fresh.
Yeah.
You can't even freeze the food.
Yeah.
That makes it extremely difficult. And the biggest issue with every restaurant business is how cash heavy it is.
Yeah.
People in ACFU openly points that it as a front business for money laundering, because it's that cash heavy.
No, this industry is cash heavy. I agree with you. So people have started paying online. People have started paying through credit cards. Paytms are now, the QR codes are lying everywhere.
Yeah, QR code is virtually everywhere.
Yeah, UPI, everything. So yes, there is a mode change, but obviously money tracking is still easier. But where people just siphon up the assets or the raw materials, it's really tough for you or as an auditor. You don't have an experience how much paneer is going to go in and paneer butter masala, right? Unless you target your investigations towards those areas. So we did for every vegetable on the menu card.
Mm.
And then you map it to those. Yeah, because they are costly. Every additive, it's not cheaper. So when you do that, the revenue shooted up like anything, because the cost reduced, the net revenue was up. Because the cost drastically reduced, the efficiency increased, people stopped theft, people stopped eating over there,
Yeah.
the inner staff, they started giving correct quantities to the customer, and that's how I should be running my business. Like, I'm not doing a
Yeah.
charity,
Yeah.
I'm running a business.
Yeah. And if you watch Gordon Ramsay on Hell's Kitchen,
Yeah,
you'll see how angry he is. If
yeah,
one dish goes wrong, he starts shouting here and there. And the
yeah.
reason is not because that he's a rude person or something. It's because when you see how much it costs,
Yes, yes.
that
Plus the
hal,
resource.
that fresh ingredients, how much it costs, you'll shout worse than him.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Another kind of element which we've seen and can be captured, where there could be a lot of revenue saving. Apart from that, there are many such touch points in an hotel industry, right from laundries to a lot of elements, even staff, tracking staff.
The,
So
the
it's
timesheets,
very difficult.
especially.
Absolutely, the in out movements, everything.
Mhm.
So all of the, right from the front desk to your travel to your room management and laundries to your food in and to your spas and other recreational activities. Everything has some of the element which are currently loosely controlled. If
Mhm.
controlled better in such scenarios, will give you a boost in saving in your cost, increase your efficiency, good customer service. End of the day, one customer cannot be differentiated from another who tips you and who doesn't tip you. So
Mhm.
even your industry will, you will get good remarks on that, because we've seen customers where you see that a particular waiter is specifically serving a particular table, the others get angry on it, and you lose your goodwill. So all these things matter and count together. These are all intangible benefits also. So there are quantitative and qualitative benefits
Yeah.
of such exercises.
But we are really pushing the bar in operational efficiency.
Yes.
So that's actually the first indicator of fraud. Operational efficiency. If there is something wrong, you have to look into that there. And if it grows like that, then you're going to have a lot of revenue loss. Wow. This is actually also a very interesting thing, because if you look at ACFE statistics, number two reason of finding fraud is always internal audit. It's happened in 2020. The same findings they found in 2018 and even possibly 2016 also. Because internal audit, as per CIA, has a lot to do with operational efficiency and effectiveness.
Yes.
That's where they catch it in the start.
Yes, and that's where I do recommend many times the companies that you should have an expert who views these observations with an element of investigation. Like, could there be
Mhm.
something wrong over here? So, like you said, the CFE, ACFE, or somebody who's experienced in this field, to have a different eye or out of the box eye to look at these elements and say, add value to the customers or to their clients. That is what even I've been telling a lot of firms or internal auditors to even have a blend of this in their team, which
Mhm.
could also boost up their quality in terms of serving their customers.
Oh, that's a lot of interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Now, moving ahead, we looked at micro stuff. Now, let's go macro. The grand scheme of things. Now, basically, we have to look at the entire organizational structure now. Now, what happens is that we'll just take a public limited company, okay? They have independent directors, internal auditors, external auditors. Still, frauds are happening. That too at an entity level. We're of occupational. Okay, we're at entity now, at an entity level. So, the first question which always comes by media houses, not by me, and please don't blame me in this, is that do we need to overhaul the system? Do we need somebody more? Like, wave flow mein NFRA also came. So, do we need more people, and what's your take on that?
So see, I'll tell you, there is always a line of defense defined.
Hmm.
And that's where the entire controls, the systems which come into place. Like when Enron happened,
Oh,
US had to
yes.
do an overhaul. come up with Sarbanes-Oxley Act, because of which many even delisted from Nasdaq. We know
Yes.
because of that compliance issue. Today also people are averse for that kind of in compliance, but yes, it covers operational and financial controls.
Mhm.
So things do evolve when you see such elements. We've seen in India, we've seen internal financial control coming in, we've seen peer reviews going up. So, but in terms of line of defense, obviously the first line of defense is management. Then those charged with governance, which is basically the audit committees, if you're listed or
Mhm.
top entities, or the board of directors with independent directors. So definitely the composition of board is the first thing which we should be looking at.
Yes.
That do they have professionals on the board?
Mhm.
Are those people capable of catching such financial elements, operational elements? It's a blend of entire board, quality of board.
No, but
Uh,
the problem with independent directors is that usually it's that section, I don't remember. I think it's 249 or something. It's that definition of independence. It does only shows independence. It does not show qualification as such.
Things
So
things have changed now. You see that even directors have to appear for exams.
yes,
They need to have a
that is a
certificate
that is a
to
very
appear.
welcome change.
Yes. So things evolve, as we said, that
Mhm.
as you keep
Mhm.
growing, you come for such things. And wherever in defense also we see a hole, we try to plug in.
Yeah.
So that's how the management is one of the most key factors in such. But most of this high level frauds which you're talking about is where top management is already a part of, and hence it happens. Apart from that are all occupational frauds which happens within the entity. So hence we have further line of defense, which is internal auditor, which reports directly to the audit committee or the board,
Mhm.
independent board. Then post that you also have your stat auditors coming in, and then
Yes.
the regulators, as you said. So there, yes, there are line of defense, but when the first line of defense it's itself involved, first and second line, it's
Mhm.
going to be really difficult for the defense lines below
Mhm.
to capture it, because it's done intentionally, it's
Yeah.
done with planning many times. So it is really difficult. Some of the frauds which we've seen, there is also connivance, and that's where you need a regulator overtopping all of those things. So yes, it's scenario based, but things are changing, things are evolving. You may start seeing frauds even in blockchains. Today blockchain is considered to be the topmost secured environment. Tomorrow, even that
Yes.
line of defense could be
See,
broken.
it has been broken because in South Africa, the entire exchange went missing.
Yes, yes. So everything is possible, but yes, your quality of those defense is one of the most critical element. The evaluation of those qualities. Apart from that, I have always been raising my voice saying that the CFO of such entities
Mhm.
should be a qualified, maybe a qualified chartered accountant. So that he is aware of what is going through. He may be able to stop, because even his is a point. He can be well regulated by the institute or by NFRA or whatever comes in India.
Mhm.
But he could be well regulated if he's a part of a professional body, a member of a professional body.
Or an
He's well
IFAC
regulated.
member.
Yeah.
Yeah, IFAC member.
Yeah, absolutely. So if he's part of some organizational body, professional body,
Mhm.
it is easy to regulate them. Today, many organizations of where frauds have happened, you will go and ask for a CFO,
Mhm.
and you will meet him. He'll have no financial knowledge also many times.
Mhm.
So he's just a CFO on paper many times. So these are kind of elements which can be stopped with some critical steps taken, rather than blaming auditors or blaming anybody.
Yeah, see, that's always the first step in the media. What were the auditors doing?
Happens. That's a
That
part
thing,
and
but
part.
no, the problem is it takes time to understand anything. But breaking news breaks everything. It's actually technically broken news.
True, true.
And
So happens, and we have to be prepared for it.
yeah,
The education is one of the most important element to educate the investors, the shareholders, that auditors are fifth or sixth in the line of defense, and not
exactly.
the first line of defense. So, which obviously an education is required through, again, media,
Hmm.
if possible. But yeah, it's still going good. Things will evolve, and I think yes, our institute is doing good to educate people
Yeah,
that
but
what right way.
yeah, sometimes it comes in a very odd way. Example has to be the PNB scandal because That's how the NFRA came into place. That was the final push which came the NFRA. But when the charge sheet was filed, no auditors were blamed in that. It was completely internal.
See, I'll tell you, it's not about how NFRA came or evolved. It's even if you'll go to US, you have PCAOB.
Yeah, they
So you have the
UK has
CTS.
another one also.
Yeah. Everybody has one regulator in a different element.
Yes.
And regulating the body. So obviously, we tried to look at that environment of PCOB and NAFRA is somewhere look to be an outcome of it. As I said, everything takes time to evolve. Even PCOB has gone through those stages. Why required, what required. Once there are proper demarcations, and I think there will be better regulation in the country. End of the day, everything is for the good of the nation, is what I believe.
Well, things are progressing well, but again, looking at an forensic investigation, the biggest issue is always time. And I remember telling you once that I have a case from 1617, and I was already a little pissed off at that. Well, like, "Itna purana hai, what can I do?" And that's when you tell me you're looking at a case from 1011.
Yeah. So these days, in fact, most of the cases related to banks, they started evaluating from 1011 because most of the forensic started in 1819. Obviously, then lockdown came in.
Yes.
But when IBC also came in, there was a flow of investigations. So 8 years is what maximum you can, currently required to maintain the documents. You can go back. You can still go back beyond. But 8 years, any which ways, you need to have documents. So somewhere 2010 was picked up, 1011 was picked up as the year. Because till then you are any which ways legally were required to put up those. So generally sometimes they go back 7-8 years, and ideally it is when, because you have to start the trail from the day money entered the system. So sometimes it has entered 7-8 years back. Till 3-4 years everything was good, so nobody looks at it. Post that 2-3 years things start going down, and then you start realizing things were wrong. So you have to start your work from where the money entered the system to know where the money is. So that's where, yes, investigations are going back 6 years, 7 years, sometimes 8 years, and that depends on when the money was inflated into that system that time.
See, but there is a conundrum over there. You have to go back 8 years, but you have to catch it and somehow finish it off before it goes to the IBC, because IBC moratorium, once it comes, then many legal options are extinguished.
So obviously it's after you get the order, and forensic is done before you get the IBC order. So obviously those moratoriums are not available at that point in time when the forensic is happening. No IBC order is passed without a forensic report. So IBC starts, but it cannot end without it. So that's one element. But end of the day, yes, as we were discussing, if something is done proactively, we would not see such scenarios. We might not need such strong regulators, which we are talking about today, or scariness which is there in auditors. We would not need all these things if management first hands were proactive. Then the people who have given the money, the investors, the bankers, if they are proactive, then the internal auditors, state auditors, so all of them, if they are proactive, scenarios would be different and regulations would be very lessly required if everybody is proactive.
Yeah. And the simplest thing, I mean, the best part about starting investigation, and there is always a fight about this, that is public data enough to find anything wrong? Because even when I work, there will be some of my colleagues who would say that ki bank statement mil jata na, khatam. And it's not a public document. You have to go to court to get that. But the point is that we have to establish something is wrong properly before we can even access that data. And the real question is that, is this public information, these simple ROC records, are they enough most of the time?
No, 2-3 things. See, the public documents are not enough for investigation, but public documents, if been reviewed correctly by investors or by some agencies or whosoever, they may give you red flags for the investigation. There may not be a fraud, there may be a fraud. But when we are talking about going into a bank statement, you are already appointed as a forensic investigator or an investigating agency. Now, that is the time you will have access to all of this data, because you are appointed either by regulator, bankers, shareholders, or some who is at the authoritative level. So you will get those documents when it happens. Public data will only help you to see whether there are any red flags to be further investigated.
Yeah.
And once you come across a red flag, then obviously there will be different ways and channels to get into it. So several times we've seen there's whistleblower, and hence you've been asked to do. So there is a red flag by a whistleblower. There are several times you may see ratio analysis which may throw up, red flags. You may see comparisons between the entity and the market, and it may throw up red flags. So these are all the elements when you see and it shows a red flag. That's the time the authoritative people or those charged with governance can take a call of getting into an investigation mode.
All right, so that was wonderful. Now, going ahead, let's have one last question. Now, going ahead of fraud prevention, we are being so proactive. USA has the FCP Act, which has a global reach and it criminalizes bribery. Similarly, there's UKBA for UK. And this very act of criminalizing bribery, act of giving bribes is criminalized over there. So do you think that similar acts will be enacted in India, and will they be a deterrent to future frauds?
See, we've seen in past that when things or scenarios go out of control, we obviously be looking at developed nations. Like as I said, the MFRA is somewhere outcome of PCOB. We have IFC, which is somewhere a portion of Sarbanes-Oxley. So there are acts which are being framed over there because there the scales are quite larger when they come out. They frame an act to stop all those things. Obviously, developing nation, it takes a little bit of time. But the way things are moving towards governance, the way governance is being made stronger day by day, such kind of an act could also see a day of light very soon in India.
That would be very interesting because many entities in India do need specialization in FCPA. And if we have our own act, that would be actually very interesting to look forward how it comes out.
Obviously, in past, in every area, we've been having it our own. May it be accounting standard, may it be auditing standard, may it be regulations, may it be forensic standards now, which we have developed, which is nowhere in the globe. So, yes, India has been proactive. India has been moving fast. There is things which crops up a lot in this area very soon. You will definitely see. So obviously, if it gets automatically crubbed, or gets crunched because of lot of things being automated, lot of things being transparent now, especially the real estate, developments being completely transparent now. So that's one way of crubbing it. Other obviously, post that you might see an act for future controls.
Oh, that's really been enlightening. Chirag sir, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for sparing your time to be here. So to everyone out there, prevention is better than cure, and trust me, fraud can become incurable. So everyone stay safe and see you next time.
Thank you. Thanks, Anirudh.
Yeah, sure. So thank you.